Hello, Brother Virtus here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the importance of simplicity in the life of the virtuous man. I want to start by thanking a great friend of mine who inspired all the ideas I'll be talking about here thanks to fruitful discussions we had together. He's also the only subscriber to this channel for now, so I hope that this channel expands and that my message gets to as many men as possible, especially if it helps building such bonds of friendship between us. So, simplicity, what is it? Again, it can be defined in many different ways, but I'll stick to my own experiences and meditations. Essentially, simplicity is the contrary of complexity. Now, you probably know that a complex thing is a thing that is composed of several different things, while a simple thing is composed of one thing only. There are many examples of this distinction. Imagine a beverage. If you're drinking a sidecar cocktail, it's a complex beverage composed of cognac, Cointreau, fresh lemon juice, and sugar. But if you're going for a glass of water, it's usually the simplest beverage you can get, right? So my thesis in this video is that we should stop trying to make our lives look like complex cocktails and stick to good, pure, fresh water instead. Why, you're going to ask? Cocktails are delicious and enjoyable. They represent not only complexity but also pleasure. And that's why I chose this example. In fact, humans are naturally wired for the accumulation of things, and the more things we get, the happier we are. It stimulates pleasure hormones in our brains. It's an instinctive response. That explains a lot of human phenomena, such as capitalism or the need for intense pleasure, such as fat and sugary foods, sex, and drugs. All these things are associated with a sensation of abundance that humans are perpetually looking for because they have been hunter-gatherers for thousands of years. This is the evolutionary approach I talked about in a previous video. Even if we are living in an age of abundance now, most of human history was a struggle for survival. That created instincts deeply rooted in our genetics that we cannot avoid without many efforts. Just think about all the times you indulged in junk foods or in masturbation. I'm not saying these things are bad, I'm saying that they're instinctive. Now, I'll explain why simple things are healthier and should be sought by the virtuous man. When you feel the need to drink because you're thirsty, the only thing you need is water. But if you drink soda instead, you'll add sugar and other junk to your water. You don't need to, but you do it because it's more pleasant to drink soda. So instead of getting the thing required in order to fix your need, you get something that is not mainly aimed at fixing this need but has several other functions, such as providing more energy, more pleasure, and more social ease also, very often. Long story short, you only need to fulfill one need, but you fulfill many others in the process. Now you might be thinking, isn't that awesome? Why should I stop doing that? Isn't it a way more efficient way to live? Well, short term, sure, it's cool to have so many needs fulfilled in one single time. But in the long run, you forget that you didn't need these things originally and you start creating needs that didn't exist in the first place. You become more needy, literally speaking. And by doing that, you become weaker and thus less strong, less virtuous. Let's examine a less material example now. Think about communication, which is a more abstract thing. The reason we communicate is primarily to send messages that are necessary for our survival to other people. It's also necessary in order to create bonds with other human beings and thus be part of a community that will create the conditions of survival and reproduction of the species. But if you start talking about more and more complex things so that it's becoming hard for others to understand what you're saying, you're not communicating anymore. In order to be efficient, communication must be understandable and thus simple. If nobody understands what you say, because it's too complex, your message will not be heard and people will not create bonds with you. It's a matter of survival, as I said, but it's also a matter of virtue. In fact, the more we live and accumulate experience, the more complex our thoughts become. Very often, people who talk a lot don't even know what they're talking about. They're just talking for the pleasure of talking and getting people's attention. But by doing that, they're destroying the primary purpose of communication, and in the end, nobody will even care listening to them anymore, and they'll feel misunderstood. They become isolated and angry men who have no control over their life, their ideas, and their emotions. One last example, more spiritual now. Notice how I cover three different levels of action: material, mental, and spiritual life. These three levels correspond to three levels of life: survival, life, and afterlife. I'll talk more about that in another video, but for now, just remember that these three levels are essential whenever you are meditating on virtue. So, my last example is religion. The primary purpose of religion at the individual level is to articulate thoughts about God and everything mystic, be it the creation of the world, the afterlife, wonders of all kinds, and to help put them into practice by offering general rules for life. Every religion has different ideas and practices, but they all serve the same purpose: guide you into the development of your own faith. Notice how religion and faith are two different things here. Religion is not supposed to cover everything in your faith. It's just a general guide that can be used by many different people with very different views and behaviors actually. Just think about the diversity in Christianism, for example. The problem is when you don't make the distinction between religion and faith. You're using religion for other purposes than what it's meant for. So basically, by ill-defining the purpose of religion in your life, you're making a more complex thing out of it. And so you're creating needs that didn't exist in the first place. Again, for example, you start thinking that religion can help you find a community that would be like a second family for you. Or you start using a religion as a means to convince other people of certain ideas. But the truth is that all these uses of religion are distortions of the simple purpose of religion. The virtuous man doesn't need religion for any other purpose than to reflect about his own faith. If he wants to find a community, he can do that by being a sociable being. If he wants to have convincing arguments, he can think by himself. The virtuous man only uses things for what they are meant for, and only fulfills his needs in simple ways. He doesn't look for maximal fulfillment, but instead for maximal strength, virtue, and for that he needs simplicity, he needs discipline, he needs control of his own impulses and instincts. He strives to be as self-sufficient and frugal as he can, for being dependent and needy makes him weak. That is why he doesn't need complex things in his life, and he can be happy with a simple glass of water when everyone else is drinking mojitos and eating cheesecakes. That, brothers, is true virtue and strength. Thanks for listening. More content coming soon. Please comment and subscribe if you want to, and as always, keep evolving in virtue, brothers.